Hi, I'm Chuck Moore, teaching pastor here at the First Baptist Church of Champaign, Savoy. Well, here we are in the middle of the month of June. It's 90 degrees outside, the humidity is high, everybody is hot. And so what's an appropriate passage from out of the Bible to read? Well, why not Luke chapter 2, where we read these words? But Mary treasured all of these things up in her heart, and she pondered them. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all of the things that they had seen and heard, which were things that they had just been told. Now, you might be thinking, Chuck, that sounds a lot like the Christmas story, so why on earth are you looking at the Christmas story in the middle of June? Because it really does have something to say to us, not about the weather, but about the way in which we are going to bounce back from this pandemic. The question as we move into stage 4 of this pandemic here in the state of Illinois is, how are we going to return to the things that feel somewhat normal? Well, ask the question about the shepherds. The shepherds had just seen Jesus. They had just worshiped Jesus. And what does the text say? The text says that they returned glorifying and praising God because of all of the things that they had just seen and heard. Or in other words, the very truths that they had just experienced and the very lessons that they had just learned. As we move into stage 4 of this pandemic, my question is this: what kinds of things have you seen and heard about God, about faith, about yourself, which you don't want to unlearn once this pandemic is over? For example, what have you learned about dependency? Of how dependent we are upon God and not just upon ourselves? What have you learned about your priorities? Have you been having to rethink the words of Jesus when Jesus said to seek first His kingdom? Because everything else in this life doesn't really matter. And what have you seen and heard and learned about community? Loving our neighbors, reaching out to people in need. Well, as we move into stage 4 of this pandemic and we start to move back to some sense of normalcy, my hope and my prayer for all of us is that the very things that we have seen and heard will guide us and impact us as we move into the future. I would love to hear, what have you seen and heard and discovered and learned over the past several months that are going to help guide you as you move into the future? Hit the reply button and let us hear from you. What have you seen and heard? I'm Chuck Moore, and I'm just wondering,